Okay, hi. So this is me again, and I'm going to do a book review of The Hunger Games, mostly focusing on Mockingjay. So let me start by saying that I liked all three of the books equally. I can't really pick out which one I liked the best. In the first one, they showed us the districts and told us about the lives of the people in District 12. And then throughout the Hunger Games, we basically learned about how things were in this time and age. In the second book, they expanded. They showed us the different types of arenas that's been in the past and different types of victors and children that participated. We got to learn more about the Hunger Games. It's like seeing season 1, season 2, season 3 of different types of Hunger Games when each victor tells their story, basically. And you got to see many different ways and many different personalities it would take to win the Hunger Games, judging by the past victors. And I don't know, that kind of surprised me. I never at all expected that move at all. My, expectation for book 2 would be like, oh, okay, President Snow was after my family. Let's take our family and run away, and then all of a sudden, perhaps a rebellion would start. But I didn't think that before that would happen, they would have to rejoin the Hunger Games, and it wouldn't necessarily be Katniss in charge, originally leading the rebellion. So that was a nice twist to things. Um, I really enjoyed the ending, the shocking twist of book 2. I was like, oh my goodness, did not see it coming at all. When Joanna basically seemed as if she was about to kill Katniss, but was really helping her, and then we basically learn about this rebellion starting and how she was the mockingjay in the face of everything. Okay, so moving on to book 3. I loved it. I loved it completely. This was a war book. This was a war series. It went stage by stage. I don't feel like anything in here was unnecessary. Everyone's death, it played a part, it played a role. Um, the only thing that I have to say, just only two, well, a couple of things. Um, the ending for Gail's departure. I just felt like, although I was Team Peeta, I still feel like they were both made to be such decent people, decent characters, and potentially great suitors for Katniss. So it didn't make any sense for them to end things on the note in which they did. So I was like, okay, that's not good at all. And another thing is whenever they had like maybe a romantic scene and we got some information about how Gail felt all this time, or maybe even how how Katniss felt about Peeta in this book, because it was basically her turn to basically try and convince him that, hey, we kind of sort of had something here. They didn't really elaborate on it. They didn't really elaborate on it much. And I was like, come on, this is your chance to say something. Even if you don't say those 3 magic words, say something. So yeah, that kind of irritated me a bit. Another thing. Okay, so, oh yeah, and the abrupt ending. Yeah, I wanted to know, if Katniss maybe spoke to Gale again, how Katniss' mother was in the future, and how did they end up, getting along with each other again eventually. I wanted to know about the cat. The cat really grew on me. So yeah, those were my only main issues. So yeah, um, I am on Peeta's side. There was a comment that was made that I read somewhere that, Katniss didn't really choose Peeta. It was more fate that chose him, and it's kind of true. I mean, given the certain circumstances, Peeta is best for her. Right now, her psyche is completely chipped away, which has been happening since book 1. Book 1, book 2, book 3, and then she just completely fell apart after that. And right now, the person who understands her the most, because of all that's been happening this past year, would be Peeta, and he would be best for her. She did make a comment at the end of it saying that, you know, Gale has so much fire and hatred, and I already have enough of that. And Peeta, he's the complete opposite. He is what she needs to simmer down right now in her particular state. Now, if roles were reversed, if things were changed, if the government that she grew up in was like kind of decent without maybe President Snow, and then she still met up with Gale, then perhaps having someone that was exactly like her would be beneficial to her instead of having someone mostly opposite from her. So yeah, in a sense, fate really did choose Peter. So this is why I don't basically bash Gale, or it wouldn't have hurt me greatly if she chosen Gale in the end, because he is a suitable contender. I do understand the appeals of her choosing Gale. So yeah, another thing that I really liked, I really enjoyed the character, the side characters. Very rarely that, writers in books, you actually care about all the side characters. I cared about all of them. I cared about Annie, I cared about Finnick, I cared about Joanna, I cared about Hamish, I cared about all the side characters. It wasn't just about the three main characters, well, Gale and Peter, it wasn't about the two main characters. Whenever either of them was in a scene with any other of them, it was interesting to me. I wanted to know. And that's another great trait that Susan Collins has in building up her book, her stories. So I rate this a 5 out of 5. It's great. It's a war book. It's different from a lot of the YAs because it's so realistic and hardcore and raw. And another thing that happened, this is all completely spoiler, so you shouldn't have been watching this. Prim dying in the end. Everyone is saying, oh my gosh, all of this that basically happened from Katniss entering the games was to save Prim's life. So all of it's a waste when Prim dies. And I'm like, no, that was a shocking twist. And I feel like it played a part in who Katniss became afterwards and why she chose Peeta, not just because it was indirectly from Gale, but it shaped who she became. She needed someone who would mellow her out, who would be more positive and convincing, who would help convince her mind to move on and move forward and be a better person. And that's the appeal that Peeta's always had, whereas Gale is always on the move for vengeance and fighting fire with fire. And it's like at this point she needs Peeta, you know. So that's why. Yeah, I felt like that was just so sad. That was just so gut-wrenching. I didn't see that happening. I would have cried, but it was really late at night and I was really kind of tired, so maybe my head wasn't really all in there. But I thought about it and I was like, oh my gosh, she's the person that Katniss has sacrificed everything for, and she was just taken away. I mean, that was something really big and really touching, and it came just at the right time. And I just feel like that was genius, although people hate it because they love Prim, and I'm like, her death was necessary. This is not going to end in a fairy tale way. Although I do feel like it ended kind of abruptly, I'm not angry, that they didn't have this big wedding or whatever, but it's not going to end in a fairy tale way. It's realistic. She's not going to heal from these psychological damages that she's been going through in this past year or two, just because everything is all of a sudden fixed. No, it's not going to magically change. And I'm also glad that Peeta didn't magically find some cure that made him completely better. He suffered with it his entire life, and so did Katniss. So yeah, I really liked how far Suzanne Collins went there. She wasn't trying to please everybody, although I do feel like it did please the majority of her fans. That was, she told the story. She made it, even though it was fantasy, she made it very realistic, and I could really relate. Even though I know this could never happen to me at all, I could really understand. And I like President Snow, when we got to know more of his personality, he was a very good villain. He wasn't over the top like, oh, I'm crazy, I'm psycho, I just want to kill everybody. Like, no. I like how the main villain was written. And I like how the side villain was written, and that was President Coin. And phenomenal, hands down, great book. Congratulations, Susan Collins. That was, this trilogy was great. It was fantastic. It's completely, I'm kind of like mad that I waited all these years to start reading it. Great book. I suggest that you guys read it if you haven't. Okay, subscribe and and I'll see you later.